Brightline is a new passenger train service in South Florida that I've been following on this channel. I do an update about the Brightline every week. I have a video of the Miami station under construction, and I was going to highlight that this week, but there's a bigger story. So I'll put the Miami station video up in the next couple days. But the big story now is people getting run over by trains at grade crossings. So there were 2 deaths at grade crossings last week, and a third person was struck but not killed by a Brightline train. In this video, I'm going to visit the grade crossings where these incidents occurred. I'm also going to visit some grade crossings where other accidents have occurred. I also went to Delray Beach with some footage of pedestrians dealing with fast-moving Brightline trains there. And I'm going to make some observations that'll be sure to provoke some debate. And I catch some people behaving badly around railroad tracks. So let's get to it. What you're seeing here is the Fort Lauderdale Brightline station. There's a Brightline train there that looks like it's fixing to leave. The signal gates have come down, but this guy just walked around the signal gates and he walks across the tracks. So as it turns out, the signal gate came down not for the Brightline train leaving, but for a freight train that's coming through the Brightline station. Now, one of the things they've done to the signals along this entire line is they've implemented a system where the amount of time between when the crossing gates come down and the train arrives is about the same no matter how fast the train is going. In this specific case, it was about 1 minute and 15 seconds from the time the bell started ringing and the gates started coming down until this freight train got to the station. And when I measured the time at the faster moving trains up the tracks, it seems to be about the same. So I'm going to show just a few people here doing things they maybe shouldn't be doing. This is the curve in the track right outside the Brightline station, and people are streaming back and forth across this track all day long. Sometimes it's kids, it's adults, it's I've seen women with children. There was a guy walking a couple dogs, and there's actually a gap in the fence on the other side that these people are headed for. This is the Broward Boulevard crossing, and there's a traffic light down at the end of the block. That traffic light turns red, and the cars pile up behind it. This white car is sitting right on the third track over there. There's 3 tracks here. And this happens with every light cycle in the afternoon. The cars back up, and a few cars wind up getting hung out. If you hang out here, you'll see this again and again and again with pretty much every light cycle. None of the incidents so far with Brightline trains have involved cars, but it's only a matter of time. Now here's another incident with a guy ignoring the gates down, but he gets chastised by some Brightline executives that are here inspecting the signals. You can hear the train coming in the distance.
Sir, when the gates are done, you should be crossing. Trains come all the time. They should be crossing. All right? Very, very dangerous.
So let me tell the story of what happened on Friday night. I was walking home, and the drawbridge over the new river was down, and there's a stopped freight train on the bridge. And when this bridge is down, only the smallest boats can get under it, and really only it's at low tide. This is low tide, this boat can go under it. But there's another boat that's sitting here that is going to be stuck. So the sign says bridge down for train. When the bridge is open and the boats can go, that sign will begin to click down about 30 minutes before the bridge is going to close. It counts down to tell you that there's a train coming. So I continued on to the grade crossing. This is the pedestrian grade crossing. You've probably seen me do video shoots from this location, and the grade crossing is blocked. This train's probably 1.5 miles long, so I don't know how far it goes in either direction. So I walked to the next intersection. This is 2nd Street. This is the entertainment district, downtown entertainment district, bars and restaurants over there on the other side of the train. I live on that side of the track. And you can see some people here deal with this train blocking the street. One issue for these people is that the parking garage is on this side of the track and all the restaurants are on that side of the track. And honest to God, I don't know how she did that in high heel. So let's just watch some people go back and forth over top of this train. So that's where we want to go. I'm at a disadvantage because I won't climb over the train.
Has it been like this a while?
Huh?
Has it been like this a while?
Yeah.
Oh, there's someone working on it.
That shit starts moving.
If you've ever been close to a stopped freight train, you know when it does start moving, it makes a lot of noise as it goes bang, 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 bang down the line of cars. So the train never starts fast, but it can do quite a jerk and knock someone off balance and cause them to fall off. The other thing that's actually, excuse me, happened at this crossing is that people have been doing this, running either right after the train or across the train, and there turned out to be a train coming along on the other track. So there have been fatalities at this crossing with people doing crazy things with the train. Now that's actually the Brightline station that you can see down there. This train goes right through that Brightline station. It's still right through the Brightline station. I'd walked over the next block over to Broward Boulevard where that last clip of the train station was. And by the time I got back here, the train had started to move. So I missed that experience of when the train first starts up. But what I learned later is that this train was stopped here because of an incident that happened where a Brightline train, prior to this train, had struck a pedestrian. So I'm going to cut to the next day and take a look at the grade crossing where the incident was that caused this train to be hung up. I'm at the grade crossing at Northeast 3rd Avenue and Flagler Street. This is Flagler Street this way, and Northeast 3rd Avenue crosses the track. There's 3 tracks here. This is the grade crossing where a pedestrian was struck on this last Friday night. There are 2 neighborhood bars on the other side of the tracks there. There's really not much on this side. It's kind of a little bit of an industrial neighborhood. Those 2 bars can be quite busy with just a crowd of people outside them milling around on weekends. I'm sure that was the case on Friday night. There's also a homeless person who's set up camp on the tracks. I don't know if you can see him there. I'm going to walk up and get a little bit closer picture. This person has his laundry out on the gravel on the side of the track. So I'm going to make some observations about this crossing. The first one is, here's an aerial view. This is from Google Maps. Now this photograph is from before the 3rd track was added, so it's only showing you 2 tracks. Now the first observation I'll make is that the road is crossing the tracks at an oblique angle. And that's very unusual in South Florida. Almost all the grade crossings are always at a 90-degree angle with the tracks. Another observation is that this intersection has these curbs, raised curbs between the lanes that were added. There's not much to this one. The one on the other side's a little longer. That is to discourage cars from driving around the crossing gates. Another observation I'll make here is that you'll notice on the other side of the track there's no fence. There's a fence on this side, but there's no fence on the other side of the track as far as you can see in both directions. Also, the track is raised a little bit, so all these grade crossings, it's kind of a little bit of an uphill onto the track and then a little bit of a downhill on the other side. Also here, there's no crosswalk, there's no sidewalk, and you almost have to walk in the road. There's very little room here, and then once you get across the track, there's no sidewalk on this side. So I'll turn around here and look, and you can see that it's actually no better on the other side. It's not because I'm on the wrong side of the road. So that's where the last incident took place is at this crossing with injury but not death. So now I'm going to travel to Boynton Beach, where there were 2 fatalities last week, and here's a map of Boynton Beach showing the 2 grade crossings where these incidents happened. I'm in Boynton Beach at Ocean Avenue, where Jeffrey King was killed, which is it's 1 crossing away from the other fatality. There's a crossing in between, which is Boynton Beach Boulevard, and then there's the 6th Avenue crossing, and then there's this crossing. There's nothing at all unusual about these crossings. Everything looks to be in good shape. The gates, everything looks brand new here. And Jeffrey King was riding his bike, and witnesses said that he rode his bike around the gates and was hit by the train. I am in Boynton Beach at Northeast 6th Avenue, where Melissa Lavell was killed last week. There's nothing at all about this crossing that seems unusual, although it is kind of a side street. But the only observation you could make is that there's no fences at all along this stretch of street. Apparently the 2 deaths here were at the crossings, but even in the time I've been here, I've seen several people, one carrying a bicycle and several other people just walking back and forth across the tracks in between these signals. Now you can see here that the grade crossing is in excellent condition. Everything looks brand new. Again, there's not much room here for a pedestrian. There's the street, the width of the street there's no sidewalk that goes across the track. And this little memorial here is all that's left for Melissa. So next I'm going to show you the grade crossing in Delray Beach. Delray is about halfway between West Palm and Fort Lauderdale, and the trains come within just a few minutes of each other. They don't leave exactly the same time from Fort Lauderdale and West Palm, but within a few minutes a northbound train and then a southbound train will go through, or vice versa, will go through downtown Delray Beach. So let me show you that. So this is the grade crossing in Delray, and you can see here this sign. They put this sign here as one of the measures that they've taken to try to educate people. But this street in Delray has bars and restaurants, and just to the east of where the tracks are, maybe 3-4 blocks down the street, there was an art fair. The street closed off in an art fair for the weekend. So let's take a look at what happens when a Brightline train comes through.
It goes 85 miles an hour, man. Watch my hats. This thing goes through town like,
And this time again, it's just about a minute and 10 seconds, 10-15 seconds from the time the lights start flashing until the train gets here. And the pedestrians here, I talked to some of them, are well aware that people have been killed on tracks just at the next town, North Boynton Beach, and that the trains are going really fast. But what happens is that the bells start ringing very loud, the lights start flashing, and the gates start coming down at the same time. And it sort of catches people in the crossing who are in the street by surprise. In this case, there was a lady pulling a wagon with some kids, and she had quite a struggle to get off the tracks before the gate came down. The gate almost came down, conked her kids on the head. So when those bells start ringing, it sort of strikes panic into the hearts of the people that are on the tracks. So now this is about 5 minutes later. That was a southbound train, and here comes a northbound train. Again, these gates are coming down just about a minute and 10 or 15 seconds before the train gets here, which seems like a really long time when you're standing here, because that train is so far away that you can't really hear even the train whistle. So when those signals start clanging that bell, it's really quite startling if you're a pedestrian on the tracks. And earlier, I saw pedestrians with mobility problems, like a woman with a walker and a guy in a wheelchair, having trouble coping with these tracks, even without any train coming or any panic because of the train coming. Because the rails, there's a sort of a groove in the street. So even though the grade crossing looks brand new here, some people have trouble coping with the grooves in the street at the rail. So I'm going to cut back to Fort Lauderdale. This is the grade crossing at Broward Boulevard, right on the south side of the Brightline station, and these signals start going. And there's a train coming, so I'm going to just cut ahead to where the train is. Now this is the Susan G. Komen engine, the breast cancer awareness painted train. But this was about 1 minute and 30 seconds from the time the bell started ringing until this train went by. And this is a fairly slow-moving freight train. Okay, I'm going to cut to the end of that train. And we're going to see some pedestrians behaving badly. Now there's actually a train coming the other way, so these signals do not stop. And I can hear the horn, the train horn but I'm going to zoom in here on these pedestrians, and you can see this one guy, I think it's the guy in the green hoodie, lifts up the gate. This guy on the bicycle thinks better of it. He realizes that the signals are still going. But these other pedestrians just, continue to walk across the tracks here. Now right next to the station here, the two of these 3 tracks are widely separated because the platform is in between them. So it's actually the width of this grade crossing here is actually more like 4 or maybe even 5 tracks wide as far as how far you have to walk between them. So I'm going to cut to the freight train arriving. I cut out about 15 seconds. Okay, just to cut back to show you the cars getting hung out when the light turns red and the traffic backs up. This is the same crossing. I'm actually standing here where those guys were who lifted that gate. I'm on the opposite corner. This is Broward Boulevard, right next to the station. So you don't have to wait here very long any afternoon to see cars stopped on tracks. Now this is just south of the Brightline station, and there are no Brightline trains going south to Miami right now. So I did want to go and clear up another misconception that I've heard in comments and just talking to people. This is the grade crossing of the Tri-Rail tracks at Oakland Park Boulevard, which is just to the west of I-95. You can see I-95 in the background there. Now, just over a month ago, December 7th, at this grade crossing, Robert Gray, 38 years old, as a pedestrian, was hit by a freight train. And these are the Tri-Rail tracks, but CSX freight trains also run on these tracks. Amtrak, CSX, and Tri-Rail all use these tracks. In fact, 23 people died in train accidents last year in Broward, Palm Beach, and Miami-Dade County. So trains running over people isn't anything new, and there are bound to be an statistical increase, because just per virtue of the number of trains that Brightline is running. All these grade crossings are heavily regulated by the federal government, so the equipment, the timing of the signals, the testing, the inspections are all very heavily regulated, and there hasn't been, to my knowledge, recently a tragedy at a grade crossing in South Florida that was attributed to equipment malfunction. If I'm wrong about that, somebody will correct me in the comments. So I'm going to visit one last grade crossing in this video. I'm at the Cypress Creek grade crossing with the Tri-Rail tracks in Cypress Creek Road. On March 17th, 1993, an Amtrak train hit a fully loaded gasoline truck at this crossing. The truck exploded into a ball of fire and killed a bunch of people in cars that were around that truck. Nothing they could do. How about that? There is a train coming. Let me go see if I can catch it. Alright, I didn't do that on purpose. I wasn't paying any attention to the schedule. I just happened to be coming here because I wanted to show this intersection. In a way, just to show that there are grade crossings on both of these tracks. These grade crossings have been here for decades. Now the Brightline trains run, there are more grade crossings. So there's going to be more incidents. I'm not saying I think that's okay. They have to do something about that. For one thing, the politics isn't going to work for them. Because if you look at Boynton Beach, for example, what's in it for Boynton Beach? You have trains going through Boynton Beach, blowing their horn and endangering the population, and Boynton Beach doesn't get anything out of it but noise and danger. So even though it's the residents' fault if they are crossing the tracks or driving across the tracks against the signal, that doesn't mean it's okay. There has to be more done. I think that you could do better signals. You could do signage at the street level. You could do enforcement. You could make it clearer to people that it's actually illegal to cross the tracks, and do more to deter that. I think that surveillance cameras at all of the grade crossings, even the tri-rail crossings, are overdue, because the technology is so cheap now to put webcams up. It would have cost many, many times more just 5 years ago or 10 years ago. But now the technology is very cheap. You can put very inexpensive, freestanding, no wires, wireless communication surveillance equipment at every grade crossing. That won't stop anybody from getting killed, but it will help understand how it's happening. What's the behavior of the pedestrians and the drivers, and that would help understand what measures to take to be able to fix the problem. Because I don't think it's going to be acceptable in the long run to have trains running over people. And a final thought on the politics and how the public views this. Here's a Palm Beach Post newspaper headline talking about a train victim. But when you think about it, the train is really the victim here. The pedestrian is illegally crossing the track in front of a train, causing the train to hit the pedestrian and then costing the railroad money. Now that's strictly technically speaking. Now there is a concept in law of apportion liability where, let's say that you're drunk driving and you crash into someone who ran a red light. Whose fault is the accident? Well, both drivers are at fault, and a judge or a jury would have to figure out what percentage of fault belonged to which of the people who was doing something wrong. Now the train could be faulted for not having fences along the tracks or not having adequate signals or something like that. So it's really not right to say it's the pedestrian's fault 100% always all the time just because a pedestrian is breaking the law. There could be liability on the part of the railroad if they can be found to have not done everything they should to prevent the accidents from happening. Now, apart from the liability, there is the public relations aspect of it. And, I mean, we're not excusing the morality. It's not okay to be running over people. But it's in the railroad's best interest to take whatever steps they can to prevent deaths on the tracks and at the grade crossings. Anyway, thanks for watching. Feel free to comment in the comment section and like my video if you want me to keep doing this kind of thing. And thank you very much for watching. And special thanks, of course, to anyone who managed to watch this entire video. I normally do short videos, but this is such an important subject that I wanted to explore it fully. Thanks very much.